This is a Damien Television Productions presents. Welcome to Are You Afraid of the Creepypasta Tales? Episode 11. Squidward's Suicide. I just want to start off by saying if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There isn't just one. I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course. Most internships aren't. But it did have some perks around beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time would go crazy all over it. Now, since I work directly with the editors and animators, I got to view the new episodes days before they aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had very recently made the SpongeBob movie, and the entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start the season. But the delay lasts longer for more upsetting reasons. There was a problem with the Series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back for several months. Me and two interns were in the editing room along with the lead animators and sound editors for the final cut. We received a copy that was supposed to be Fear of the Krabby Patty and gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that it isn't final yet, animators often put up a mock title card, sort of an inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lead titles, such as How Sex Doesn't Work, instead of Rockabye Ballads, where SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scalp, or nothing particularly funny but work-related chuckles. So when we saw the title card, Squidward's Suicide, we didn't think it was more than a morbid joke. One of the interns did a small throat laugh at it. The happy-go-lucky music plays as it's normal. The story begins with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says okay and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubble splash screen comes up and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is where things begin to seem off. While playing, a few times repeat themselves, but the sound doesn't. At this point, sound is synced up with the animation. So yes, that's not common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes as it never happened. As the skip never happened. There's a slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing that is common in the show, but you could very clearly hear malice in it. Squidward in full frame and looked visibly afraid. The shot goes to the crowd with SpongeBob in center frame, and he too is boring, very much unlike him. That isn't the oddest thing yet, though. What is odd is everyone had hyper-realistic eyes, very detailed, clearly not shot of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils are red. Some of us look at each other, obviously confused, but since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal for children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view out of his porthole window is of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part at this time, there is no sound. Literally no sound at all. Not even a feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were turned off. Though the stats showed him they're working perfectly, he just sat there blinking in this silence for 30 seconds. Then, he began to sob softly. He put his hands tentacles over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute more, while all the sound in the background very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded more like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly began to zoom on his face. By slow, I mean it's only noticeable if you look at shots 10 seconds apart from side by side. Its sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit as it twists on itself for a split second, then back to normal. The wind through the trees sound gets slowly louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere. The eerie part is the sound, and Squidward's sobbing sounded real, as if the sound wasn't coming from the speakers, but as the speakers were holes, the sound was coming through the other side. The sound, as good a sound as the studio likes to have. They don't purchase the equipment to be that good, to produce sound of that quality at much. Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faint, something sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so you never have a hard time pinning it. We watched this show twice, so pardon me if things sound too suspicious, but I had time to think about them. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen as if a single frame was replaced in that time. The lead editor paused and rewound frame by frame. We saw was horrifying than ever. It was a still photo of a dead child. He couldn't have been more than 6. His face was mangled and bloodied. One eye dangled over his upturned face, popped. He was naked down to his underwear. His stomach curly cut open, its entrails laying beside him. He was laying on some pavement that was probably a road. The most upsetting part was that there was a shadow of a photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence or markers, and the angles was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem that the photographer was the person responsible for the children's death. We were, of course, mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it wasn't such a sick joke. The screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing, louder than before, in half body and frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper-realistic style, looking as if you touched it, you get blood on your fingers. The wind sounded now as if there was a gale blowing through a forest. There were even snapping sounds of branches, and laughing, a deep baritone lasting at longer intervals, coming more frequently. After about 20 seconds, a screen again twisted and showed a single frame photo again. The editor was reluctant to go back. We were all there, and we knew he had to. This time the photo was that of what appeared to be a little girl, no older than the first child. She was laying on her stomach, his bullets in a pool of blood next to her. Her left eye was too popped out and popped, naked except for underpants. Her intervals were piled on top of her above, and there cruel cup along her back. Again, the body was on the street, and the photographer's shadow was visible, very similar in size and shape at first. And I had to choke back vomit and one in turn. The only female in the room ran out. The show resumed. About 5 seconds after the second photo played, Squidward went silent, as did all sound, like it was when the scene started. He put his tentacles down, and his eyes were now done hyper-realism like the others in the beginning of this episode. They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. He just stared at the screen as if watching the viewer. About 10 seconds later, he started sobbing, this time not covering the eyes. The sound was piercing and loud, and most fear-inducing of all as his sobbing was mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dripping down to his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so did the deep voice laughing. At this time, the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop on the 4th and backed up. This time, the photo was of a boy, about the same age. The scene was different. The entrails were just being pulled out from the stomach, blown by a large hand. The right eye popped and dingling, blood trickling down it. The animator proceeded. It was hard to believe, but the next one was different, but we could not tell what it is. He went on the next. Same thing. He went back to the first and played it quicker, and I lost it. I vomited in the floor. The animating and sound editors were gasping on the screen. The 5 frames were not as if they were 5 different photos of the same one. They were played out as they were frames from a video. We saw a hand slowly lit out of the guts, and saw a kid's eyes focus on it. We even saw 2 frames of the beginning of the kid began to blank. The lead sound editor told us to stop, as he had to call in the creator to see this. Mrs. Hillenberg arrived within about 15 minutes. He was confused as to why he was called down there, so the editor just continued the episode. Once the few frames were shown, all screaming, all sound again stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, full frame of the face for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out and a deep voice said, "Do it!" And we see in Squidward's hand a shotgun. He immediately pulls the gun into his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splat into the wall behind him in his bed. He flies back with the force. The last 5 seconds of this episode was showing his body on the bed on his side. One eye dangling was left on the head above the floor, staring blankly at it. Then the episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg is obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the heck was going on. Most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again. Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it in my mind and caused me horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed. The only theory we could think was the file was edited by someone in a chain from the drawing studio here. The CTO was called in to analyze when it happened. The analysis of the file did show it was edited over by new material. However, the timestamp of it was a mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it. All equipment involved was examined for Vorgen software and hardware as well as glitches, as if the timestamp may have glitched and showed the wrong time, but everything checked out fine. We don't know what happened, and to this day, nobody does. There was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came out of it. No child scene was identified, and no clues was gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues in the photos. I never believed in unexplainable phenomenon before, but now that I have something seen that happened and can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence. I think twice about things. Right, that was Squidward's suicide. Okay, that was a SpongeBob creepypasta. Most people think it was famous for. It was weird. It's disturbing also, but I kind of like this one. It's not as entertaining before, but I think I'll recommend this. This time, the next episode, episode 12, is a video game creepypasta. You know what this is? It's Pokemon Lost Silver. Okay, if you want to see that episode, I'll hope you see the episode 12. And we'll see you. Also subscribe to this channel. Has been a Damien Lack Home Television Productions. Thank you and subscribe.